so for my scope height gauge, I decided I did need grub screws, and I pulled out these little 440 jobs, and you can see how they've got a sort of a straight knurl there, but it's tiny. So what I did was I got a little piece of brass, and I drilled a hole in it that was about 3,000 smaller than the head of those screws, and I pressed the screw down in there with my arbor press. I made two different sizes of thumb screws because one's closer to something than the other, and that's sort of cheating, but that's one way to make a thumb screw without having to thread the thing. Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold and today I'm going to copy a project Mr. Lee Peden made. His channel is Mr. Pragmatic Lee, and it was a good idea, and I've made a couple of indicator holders before, but not exactly like that, and I looked at it and I thought, well, that's a good idea, so why not just copy him? And before we get down to that though, I went and got a haircut, I guess yesterday, because boss lady said I was starting to look kind of shaggy. And while I was in there, I was sitting behind this guy that was in the barber's chair, and listening to him talking to the barber lady there, and he was talking about when he was a kid they didn't have any plumbing in their house, you know, and telling a story about his dad going out to get some buckets of water, something down at the well or something, and you know, it was a long story about him, the guy having an accident in his pants and they didn't have no running water, and his mother had to go haul in 5-gallon buckets of water and all that. And anyway, so I got to looking at him, and I figured he was probably 10 or 15 years younger than me, because he'd lived when he was a kid out in some little way out in a rural area kind of town somewhere, I guess up northeast Texas somewhere. And they didn't have electricity at their place yet. So I guess that's about that same time I was living in Oklahoma, and we had electricity. We didn't have any running water, no indoor plumbing or anything. And so I got to thinking about it, and I went over to Google and I tried to find out how many people had indoor plumbing or toilets in 1955. And of course, I didn't find that in an easy to digest manner, but I did find a plumber article that told about the 1940 census, and in the 1940 census only 55% of households in the U.S. had indoor plumbing, which you pretty well sure they didn't have no toilet inside. So, but it was kind of interesting, and it went right back into the history of stuff. And I'm telling you, if you get bored, look up the history of some everyday thing, because you're bound to find it interesting, and especially if you find an article where they go back and tell you who invented this and when they did this, what the customs were back then. And I get my cheaters on here. I'm going to give you just a little excerpt from this article. It was by the Plumber's Digest or something, and it says here, it says, a Dr. Benjamin Rush had the bad luck to have a well with horrible tasting water in his backyard. The whole town flocked to it to cure all kind of ailments. When the overpumped well went dry, the people learned too late that the well connected to the doctor's privy. I guess it did taste bad. Many thought bathing was a health hazard. In 1835, the Common Council of Philadelphia, I get that said, Philadelphia, almost banned wintertime bathing. The ordinance failed by 2 votes. Now, I don't know how many people were on the city council, but that's pretty close. 10 years later, Boston forbade bathing except on specific medical advice. Now there you are. Of course, in Boston, I guess they've always wanted to run everything. It says poor water supply contributed to this attitude. The bathtub had to be filled and emptied with a hand pump and pail. It was too onerous a chore, you know. Well, I guess so. And I guess if you didn't have any heat in your house and it was 35 degrees outside, you wouldn't really feel much like a bath anyway, you know. At least I don't figure I would, although I'm one of those bathe every night guys, you know. Alright, so having bored you guys with the plumbing story, we're going to move on to making this indicator holder. And I'm going to try to do better than I did on the last two videos. I was making this scope height gauge, and I neglected to really make it clear as to what the heck it was good for. Now, I've got this smart rifle scope, this ATNX sight, and it will calculate the ballistics to a distant target. You know, you can tell it to auto range and figure out how far off the target is, and it'll set your crosshairs to compensate for all the drop, you know, and so that you'll be right on target. But one of the things it needs to do all this calculations is know how far above the bore of the rifle is the center of the scope. That figures pretty good into the calculations, because say out at 1,000 yards, a tenth of an inch could make you off 3/4 of an inch out there, you know. Not very much if you're shooting a deer, but you know, if you were hunting sparrows, it might make a big difference. Anyway, that's what it's for. And there's a lot of folks that do reloading. They figure, you know, the amount of powder. They've got these reloading programs that figure the ballistics of what they're doing, and they too need to know how far the scope is above the bore. And that's why I made that piece last week. So anyway, we'll get on now to the indicator holder and our blatant rip-off of Mr. Lee Peden's project. Like most other projects, this starts on the bandsaw. And this is a heck of an unstable way to cut something, but I think if I'm careful I can get by with it. I'll put a clamp on it along with the vise. And it's possible that I'll be able to make this cut without everything going off haywire. It looks like it's going to work out. Not so bad, huh? Once I got past the start, that's a little bit off my line, but I just arbitrarily drew that line there as a good spot, knowing full well I wouldn't want all of it. And I'm not copying dead on with Mr. Lee Peden, because there's a couple little things I'm going to do different. I don't have the exact same indicator he's got. Well, I cut myself a little rectangle out of that piece of aluminum, and I could tell by eye that it was obviously way off of square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square it up, and when I get through with that, then I'll wake you guys up again, because all I'm going to do is just feed the end mill down that way. I'm going to turn it over on the other end and square off the other end, and then it'll be pretty much square. I guess it's not absolutely essential that it be square, but that's the way I'm doing it. Alright, so now we'll want to talk about how did I measure this thing. I made myself a drawing here showing exactly where different sizes are that I'm going to cut to. And the way I measured this inside piece, excuse me, and the way I'll be measuring all of it, I put a couple of drill bits in here. They're of similar size, and stuck this little guy right here in the middle of them and squeezed it out until it's right, until it was the same size. And then I measured it with this. Now you're going to say, well, those are guesstimators. They're probably not right. Yeah, and they're probably not right. But if I use this tool that I measured this with to measure everything I'm doing, I'll still come to the same place. I may be off 2 or 3 thousandths, and I may have cut to a different size than I think I did, but I will cut to the exact same size. I hope you can understand what I'm saying there, that even if your measuring tool is off some, if you use it for all your measurements, everything's still going to fit. Now, if I was doing it off of a blueprint and this thing was off, then I'd be all messed up, because they may have made the blueprint with a tool that measured just right. But I made my drawing by getting the numbers with this tool and wrote them down over there. So when I'm making this, the numbers I get will still be with this tool, and even if it's off a couple of thousandths, they'll still be right. That's the difference. I'm not working off a blueprint. I'm working off actual measurements taken with that caliper. For how deep to cut, I use this guy right here, depth micrometer. I'll use them to know how deep I am cutting in. I'll use the DRO to keep me in line. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this Randy Richard dovetail cutter, which I've used to make tool holders before, and we're going to cut the whole thing with it. Well, we're going to cut the dovetails with it. I'm going to use this 5/8 end mill to cut down close to where I need to be, and then we'll use the dovetail cutter to finish things up there. But I'll get most of the stuff hogged out with this big guy. Okay, and I've got it marked here on the piece with some lines and some, some dye on it, dye chem, and so I don't know how much of this I'll show you in the video, but that's what I'm going to do. I've got the DRO set for the Z-axis to show there, Z in English-speaking countries, and I'm just going to cut right down to right close to the depth that I show here, 380 thousandths for the little ledge that's over here. I'm going to cut down to that, and then just for the middle part I may go like 390. Actually, I suppose it, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That'll keep the cutter from dragging on the bottom when I'm cutting the dovetail. Yeah, alright. Alright, now that's the proper width, 200 thousandths deep. So I can go down yet a bit more. I've got a little over 100 thousandths to go in depth before I start to cut the dovetail. So a 200 thousandths cut shouldn't be too much for a 5/8 end mill. So if I make a 100 thousandths cut behind this, it's definitely not going to be too much. That's almost to depth. Got another probably 30 thousandths. I'm going to stop right there, and I'll take my I'll deburr it, and I'll take my depth gauge and make sure how deep it is, and then I'll take it to exactly as deep as I want it, and then we'll swap out for the Randy Richard dovetail cutter. Alright, we got the dovetail cutter in, and we'll make the first pass with it. Probably not running fast enough, but it's aluminum and soft. Now I'll cut a little on the other side, and I'll bring you guys back when I'm through. Alright, on my drawing I put down 1.123. This is 1.1215, and my experience with the previous stuff that I did with this, that's close enough. So that's where I'm going to stop. Okay, so I heard that guy back in the back say, "Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, let's see if it fits on the tool holder." Well, I set it down there and pull her over, and it's on there. Okay. Next step, I'm going to take this thing, and I'm not going to copy Mr. Lee Peden on this part. I'm going to move back here with a post that sticks out, which means I've got to cut out a little bit. I don't have the same indicator he's got, and I'm not going to go buy one, but I do want to use the indicator that I have. And the indicator that I have is this little guy right here. I want to be able to slide him into a spot there and come way back this way with it, which means that I want the hole to be pretty much on one end probably instead of down here. I'm going to think on it. The boss lady just came by and said she wants a bowl of chili at Chili's, so I'm going to have to knock it off for the day. But anyway, I'm going to have a post out here so I can put this guy on and move him in from his relatively far out, because my machine's not that wide, but it'll swing something way out here, and it's hard to measure from way out here, if you know what I mean. So we'll let that set there until tomorrow, and we'll get on it again then. Well, here we are with a new day. Yesterday it was cold, and today it's up to about 70. That's Fahrenheit. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but the change in temperature has caused water to condense all over my equipment out here. You see that? That's not a happy thing. That doesn't make a happy old geezer. I fight against that one way or another. Usually I leave that air conditioner running all the time in the hopes that it'll level things out, but there you go. My vise had water all over it. The only thing that doesn't have water is underneath that wood there. Anyway, today's another day, and yesterday I left here to take the wife to Chili's, you know, and I tore down the freeway there until I saw the sign. It said Fridays on the top of the sign. On the bottom of the sign it said Chili's. So I whipped into the parking lot and turned left, and we jumped out and went in the restaurant, and I'm looking through the menu and I can't find any chili on it at all. And the boss lady says, you know, I don't see chili on the menu anywhere. You reckon they don't make it anymore? And I looked up on the wall, and it says on the wall, TGI Fridays. I said, no, I said, I think we went in the wrong restaurant. So we stayed there and had French onion soup and a house salad. And I was in France one time, and I thought that I remembered French onion soup as being good. But this stuff was a greasy mess with cheese floating in it and on some bread. I don't guess, maybe it wasn't good, and I just don't remember. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to get on with the project. Alright, so I've got out the old hole saw, and I'm going to cut this part loose and over here, and this piece should fall out. It would be fairly close to my lines. Doesn't matter, like I said before, how accurate they are, as long as I don't have metal in my way and it holds the indicator. So anyway, I've got the hole saw installed here, and you can see it's probably a little thicker than I need, but this stupid arbor here, once you've got a hole saw on it, you just practically can't get it off, you know. I tried to get this one off after I used it the last time, and I couldn't turn the nut. I did all kind of things. One time before, when it was stuck like that, I took my propane torch and heated it up, glowing red on the nut down here and all kind of stuff, and finally I got it loose. But you put another cutter on there and tighten it down, and you're not coming loose again. So that's going to be one of my projects one of these days, is to make an arbor that'll let go of the stupid slitting saw when I'm through with it. It doesn't need to be that hard, you know. Alright, well, I set this up, you guys can take another little nap. Alright, I've got this whole slitting saw running about 150 RPM, and I'm going to try to feed it slowly into this piece of metal. And I know it, the blade wobbling up and down, it always does that. But it cuts. So down to the line, and then I'll bring you guys back awake again. So I got to be able to go over there and squirt, you know, aluminum juice on it. Alright, I got this little chunk cut out of there. You might be wondering why I would use the slitting saw instead of the bandsaw. Well, the bandsaw was just simply not able to get a good grip on this thing. So I thought I'd do it this way. Now, I need to get me an end mill and just sort of dress up that little spot right there, because it doesn't look too pretty. It's got a little V point sticking out there, and we don't really need that. So let me find something to clean that up. Well, I took an end mill and made it look nicer. So that part is done now. So next I'm going to drill a hole right down in here, and then I'll turn it over and drill a hole back this way, and then I'll lay it down and drill a hole through here for a grub screw, and a hole down there for a grub screw, because I'm building this a different way. Alright, so just hang loose while I set up with the drill chuck. Alright, while you guys slept, I went over to the drill press and I drilled these holes, and here I tapped these two because they're going to be for this guy right here. Okay, now supposing I want to use it on the face of something, I can mount him like that. Let me pull this up so I can get him in deeper. And that's for checking the face. Alright. I may later on go back and sink that hole back in there a bit further. I certainly have room to do it. I can take him and slide him in here, latch him down. I can move him over here. I need to get a face in a little closer, and I can take it and turn it over like this, stuff him into here, and I think probably this hole is going to go deeper, but now I can come way out here, way back out here with something really large diameter, because I can turn up to 12 inches on this lathe, and I've done it. And I always had trouble getting an indicator back here to line things up. This guy's back at the back now, way back here. If I need it to move up front, I can turn it over and move in closer if I need it like that. Alright? Now my knob, this is one of my homemade knobs from the injector. It's a little bit big for the job, so I'm obviously going to have to make another mold and make a smaller knob. But I think that's going to work out for me, you know. And I know it looks a little floppy there because I didn't put the set screw in it. Alright. There. Now it's not floppy. But I think that'll do it. I could have put a screw in here to limit the depth, but when you go to flipping it over in one way or another, that could get in the way. I know this is going to work out like this, so that's how we're going to do it. And you know, a strange thing is today, I'd forgot about Mr. Pete making indicator holders also. He's been making them with his 3D printer, and he even made a double-ended indicator holder today. So now you've got to go watch Mr. Pragmatically make the version he made, and then you've got to go over to Mr. Pete's channel and watch the versions that Mr. Pete made. Everybody's done the same thing, but they did it different. So that's all I can say about that. And some of my viewers have, look at that rust on there from the weather change. Some of my viewers have got their own YouTube channels, and one of them is called Bruno M, B-R-U-N-O space M, just the letter M. and he's trying to get a channel started. So maybe you guys might be interested in going over and taking a look at his channel. And now that we've got this done and made all our daily mistakes and such, we're gonna knock off and see if there's a joke, and that'll be it. Thank you for viewing, and if you liked the video, push the like button. If you're so about it, push the like button. And if you hated the video, push the like button anyway, just for the heck of it. Alright?
Well, it seems that Bubba's got an uncle, Pierre, and Pierre's an artist. You know, he's one of those oil painting type guys. And this beautiful woman come along there to him and says, you know, she says, I want you to paint a portrait of me in the nude. Pierre says, no. He says, I ain't going to do none of that. He says, I don't do that. She says, well, how about if I paid you 5 times the normal price? So Uncle Pierre thinks on it for a couple of minutes, and then finally he says, well, he says, all right. He says, I'll do it, but I'm going to keep my socks on.
Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.